It is very hard to have clear disciplinary proceedings, complaint lines, reporting mechanisms if you don't have a definition of anti-Semitism.
That's Australian anti-Semitism envoy Gillian Siegel, whom we met in previous sessions, testifying before the Senate about the need for a clear definition of anti-Semitism.
A student might say, this is anti-Semitic. The university has to decide if that is anti-Semitic.
But it turns out that agreeing on one is both simpler and harder than you may realize.
The IHRA definition, which is the internationally accepted definition.
She's talking about the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance.
And what is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance?
Yeah, it's a group with representation from various countries that has things to remember the Holocaust.
And when she says their definition is internationally accepted, she's making a point which is both true and untrue. On the one hand, it's trivially true because IHRA is an intergovernmental organization comprising representatives from most Western nations, along with key non-government institutions. So by definition, anything IHRA agrees could be described as internationally accepted. It's accepted by official representatives from all over the world. But that's not the same as generally accepted, which is what most people think when they hear someone say.
The internationally accepted definition.
In fact, it's quite widely rejected, including by many Jewish people, as well as by the actual author of the definition himself, who insists that he created it for survey and statistical purposes, not for policy setting, and certainly not for identifying or characterizing individuals as anti-Semites. In some sense, this is surprising because the definition itself is actually banal. In fact, it's worse than banal. It's incoherent. You can read it for yourself. Aside from whatever political objections one may have, this is an affront to the English language. I had to read it 10 times to figure out what it means. But the best I could do was conclude this. In not so many words, a certain perception of Jews which manifests as behavior. That's it. It's pretty straightforward. You can look it up yourself. I guess it's not worthy of an international plenary session working definition if it were written in concise, plain English. Nevertheless, at the risk of sounding pedantic, that's pretty much it. You might be asking what the big deal is. Why is it so controversial? Why should you care? And why do we think the conversation about this definition may be much more controversial for all of us, especially for fellow Australians who happen to be Jewish? That's what we're going to discuss in this session. With that as our agenda, let's take up the most basic point, which is about the IHRA definition itself.
Star David around my neck, hey.
The IHRA definition, which is the internationally accepted definition.
As we said, it's technically anodyne, but in practice, it's incoherent and destructive.
The complexity and the controversy in relation to many definitions comes when you talk about Zionism and Israel.
The complexity Ms. Siegel is talking about is not with the IHRA definition itself, but with a set of helpful examples the delegates agreed might serve as illustrations of anti-Semitism. There are 11 of them, and the complaint people have is that of the 11, only 5 have anything to do with perceptions of Jews, the working definition to which the delegates in that Budapest plenary session agreed. Perhaps it was the jet lag, or the effects of the Budapest nightlife. But somehow none of the delegates noticed that 2 of the beliefs are about the Holocaust, and the other 4 are about Israel. Those are not, strictly speaking, certain perceptions of Jews.
Wait a minute, this is being used by groups like the Zionist Organization of America and others to go after speech on campus.
You may believe that only an anti-Semite might hold those views, but that is different from a definition. That's why the IHRA definition, by which we mean the definition plus the so-called helpful examples, which to be clear is why it is so controversial, has attracted so much criticism, including by Jewish organizations, as well as by their author, Kenneth Stern.
They decided to take this text and use it to advocate in a way I find abominable in ways that was never intended to be used.
Who insists he created them for survey purposes, not policy-setting purposes, and certainly not for the purpose of, say, disciplining students, faculty, or protesters.
Am I right in thinking that the reason this becomes so widely known is not because of the strength of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. It's because the Israeli government or other organizations that have more influence decide to push for that. Why does that start to happen?
What it sets out is that you can criticize Israel as long as the criticism is the sort of criticism you could level at any other country.
Again, that's true of the strict definition, but is not true of the helpful examples. Because they say, for example, that you cannot call Israel a racist endeavor, or draw comparisons between Israeli policy and the policy of the Nazis. No comparisons are permitted, even as a warning or a moral lesson. That's why
Then Australian Treasurer and MP for Kooyong, Josh
Frydenberg, for example, felt entitled to say this about an anti-Israel protest.
It's exactly why we have a Human Rights Commission, to investigate behaviour such as this.
The Human Rights Commission, over a sign at a protest against the actions of a foreign government, which Mr. Frydenberg, taking upon himself to speak for all Australian Jews, believes should be investigated as a possible violation of human rights.
Signs comparing Israel's Prime Minister to Hitler has sparked anger within the Jewish community. Another sign said, "Well done, Israel. Hitler would be proud."
Clearly, the words Hitler would be proud are triggering for Mr. Frydenberg. And Australians who know about his personal family history can perhaps understand why. But if so, they might have been surprised at the serenity with which Mr. Frydenberg listened to someone in the very same Sky News documentary say this.
Hitler would be proud.
Yep, he said that.
Hitler would be proud.
About Australia, to Mr. Frydenberg's face.
Watching what's happening today in Australia, Hitler would be giving thumbs up.
That's Sir Peter Cosgrove, hero of the peacekeeping mission to East Timor, former Chief of the Armed Services, Governor-General of Australia, and companion of the Order of Australia. Using those same words, Hitler would be proud, that Mr. Frydenberg finds it objectionable to use when describing Israel. So clearly it is not true that
You can criticize Israel as long as the criticism is the sort of criticism you could level at any other country.
because it seems you can compare Australia to Nazi Germany.
Hitler would be proud.
Or can you? In 2019, when Mr. Frydenberg was facing an election challenge from human rights lawyer Julian Burnside, he took great exception to Mr. Burnside's suggestion that the government might be using anxieties about immigration and invasion to whip up political support, using this quote from Hermann Goering as an apropos reminder of where such exploitation of social anxiety can lead, even suggesting that the government might engineer a well-timed vote interception to put the issue into voters' minds at the time of the election. Now, leaving aside whether the immaculately timed announcements about votes from Sri Lanka just days before the 2019 election, and again the day before the 2022 election, was just a coincidence or an example of what Mr. Burnside was predicting, was the reference really offensive to Australia's Jewish community? Was it more offensive than proclaiming
Hitler would be proud
about Australia? We'll never know, because the storm of denunciations, amplified by News Corp and joined by such figures as chairman of the Australian Anti-Defamation Commission, Dvir Abramovich, Warren Feinberg, executive of the Holocaust Memorial Museum, and even a bona fide Holocaust survivor, Moshe Fitzman, helped drive Mr. Burnside out of politics. Yet somehow their plea to Mr. Burnside to stop referencing Nazis, according to this quote, never made its way to Sir Peter.
Watching what's happening today in Australia, Hitler would be giving thumbs up.
It also never made its way to Israel. That's an image of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, portrayed at the many febrile protests in Israel in 1995, dressed up as a Nazi.
It's a despicable anti-Semitic slur that evokes memories of the Nazi era.
It certainly does, and Mr. Frydenberg would be right to say that about the right-wing protests in Israel against the Oslo Accords. But no, that's not his voice talking about these protesters. That's his voice talking about Jenny Leong, and an image she never referenced, as we established in the first video. Although now Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu never himself used this explicit imagery, to our knowledge. He did frequently claim that the Oslo Accords, the official policy of the State of Israel, would confine Jews to what he called Auschwitz borders. According to
the IHRA definition, which is the internationally accepted definition,
that is pretty clearly anti-Semitic, because if that's not drawing comparisons of a contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis, at least rhetorically, we don't know what is.
What extent do you blame Mr. Netanyahu and the Likud for what has happened?
I do blame them.
That's Leah Rabin, Yitzhak Rabin's widow. She came that close to accusing Mr. Netanyahu of regicide, but not of anti-Semitism. Although, to be fair to her, nobody would ever believe that Bibi Netanyahu is self-hating.
The way the administration is using the term anti-Semitism is synonymous with leftism.
That's Yale professor Jason Stanley, reminding us that it's always like this. In America, accuse a Democrat president of being a secret Muslim who hates his country, and you're just exercising your rights. Inquire about the evidence for the case for war.
Well, buddy, America, love it or leave it.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
That's the problem with IHRA that won't go away. It's not just to say that advocates of the IHRA definition are hypocritical, or to be more precise, any more hypocritical than any other imperfect human being. It's that the definition is incoherent, and thus makes hypocrisies like these inevitable.
Our war, our conflict is not with you, it is with terrorism.
That's the chair of Australia's Anti-Defamation Commission, referring to Israel's war against Hamas as our war. Speaking here not as an Israeli citizen, but as a representative of the Australian residents of Caulfield. Needless to say, according to
the IHRA definition, which is the internationally accepted definition,
that kind of presumption is an unambiguous example of anti-Semitism. Now, to be fair to Mr. Abramovich, he is certainly not the only person, Jew or otherwise, who believes
Israel is Judaism and Judaism is Israel.
Their Jewish identity supersedes their local identity.
Judaism without Israel, it's not a thing.
It's just that we wouldn't have expected the chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission to struggle with one of only 11 examples of anti-Semitism spelled out in what is supposed to be
the best definition, the one that's been internationally accepted and that has been accepted by the Australian government and opposition, which is the IHRA definition
of anti-Semitism. If we've got a definition that not even the chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission can manage, we've got no hope for the rest of Australia. That's awkward.
You make the rules so vague that they apply to everyone, and then you choose who's going to get hit. And who always happens to get hit, very coincidentally, the people who don't support Israel in the permanent warfare state.
Yeah.
Always. Always.
That undermines the solidarity we need at this moment. In fact, it's even worse than that. The hypocrisy is the least of its problems, because it encourages destructive behaviors which undermine social cohesion and solidarity. Let's go back to the 2019 election for a moment. Instead of engaging with his constituents on the substance of Mr. Burnside's criticism of his government, whether about offshore detention, climate policy, or Israel, Mr. Frydenberg, facing the first real challenge to the Liberal Party in Kooyong in the nation's history, succumbed to the temptation to see his opponent slandered as a Jew hater. Trust us, we get it. We can imagine how attractive this proposition must have seemed to a young, ambitious politician looking for a solution to his problem. Like the sugar hit from that muffin in the morning, the jolt of energy and advantage must have felt amazing. But eventually these things catch up with you. There are no shortcuts in life. Mr. Frydenberg won the 2019 election, full of expectation for great things to come, only to find himself 3 years later, politically and intellectually out of shape to compete with a new competitor and engage with her arguments substantively, and unfortunately for him, found himself disconnected from the mass of his Kooyong constituency. As the campaign progressed and his pollsters finally realized how dire was his predicament, instead of fundamentally rethinking his message and approach to engagement with his own constituents, his team found themselves reaching once again for that political cocaine. In a tweet that has since been deleted, Representative, now Senator Dave Sharma accused Simon Holmes a court of, you guessed it, anti-Semitism, which was then amplified by Mr. Frydenberg's allies in the press as they have done so many times before. Looping into the effort none other than Mr. Abramovich himself, who, despite his personal missteps with the IHRA examples of anti-Semitism, which we just discussed, took the time to weigh in on Mr. Holmes à Court's obviously sardonic tweet about a political opponent that had absolutely nothing to do with Jews, Nazism, or anti-Semitism. And I can personally testify as a resident Kooyong that many found Mr. Abramovich's accusations not only offensive to Mr. Holmes à Court, who is well known in the community, but also a cynical instrumentalization of Holocaust memory. If Mr. Abramovich really is aware of a Holocaust survivor who suffered distress from Mr. Holmes à Court's sardonic tweet, we'd be curious to know how they made it past 1968, when the comedian Mel Brooks produced this, just 23 years after the liberation of Auschwitz.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany.
And then 15 years later produced this.
Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil myself!
I recognise, and I've fully said from the beginning, that we don't have the same freedom of speech laws that they have in the United States. And the reason for that is that we want to hold together our multicultural community and have people live in peace, free from the kind of vilification and hatred that we do see around the world.
Which, if it were performed as street theater or in a park today, could end up leading to criminal charges under our new hate speech laws, which make it illegal to display a swastika regardless of purpose or intended message, no matter how self-evident that message is.
An assembly like this one will be illegal.
We are told by those who know it's not true that the mere sight of these symbols causes emotional distress. And for some reason, the rest of us pretend to believe it.
The advocates for those changes need to explain what do they want people to have the right to say.
These are the kinds of phrases and symbols that are part of normal discourse, including protest discourse, that governments and people in authority would love the excuse to interpret in the worst possible way to create a pretext for censorship.
I don't think it ought to be blasphemy. Just saying Jehovah. You're making it worse for yourself.
This isn't new, folks. It's always been this way. The irony of hate speech laws premised on the idea that certain symbols are so offensive that their mere display causes distress is that they led to Mr. Yazbek being arrested. And then the same presumably distressing symbols splashed across the front pages of almost every newspaper in Australia. In other words, but for these hate speech laws, it's unlikely that any Jewish person who does not have a reason to attend the rally at which Mr. Yazbek was displaying his protest symbol, much less any Holocaust survivor, would have never seen Mr. Yazbek's sign and would have never had occasion to feel the distress, which we are told is the justification for these laws.
Was it you? Yes. Right, well, you did say Jehovah.
As we shall see, Mr. Abramovich, just like Mr. Frydenberg and News Corp and all of their allies in the Liberal Party, is extremely selective about when they choose to wheel out senior citizens from their homes to proclaim emotional distress. By sheer coincidence, it's always when it can inflict political or even legal damage on Australians who are saying things they don't want said.
What kind of racist abuse do they want to see or be able to lawfully see on the streets of Sydney?
A little piece of Poland, a little piece of France, a little piece of Portugal, and Austria perchance. Who brought the curtain down? Sorry, Mr. Bronsky, I was ordered to. Ordered to? By whom? By me. And who are you? Dr. Boyarsky. And what gives you the right to stop my show? Your presentation could be construed as a direct insult. Construed? It was meant to be an insult. I am sorry to tell you this, Mr. Bronsky, but we cannot allow you to ridicule the leaders. It's too risky. The last thing we want is a furious Führer. Let me tell you something, Dr. Boyarsky. The curtain's going up again, and we're going to finish that number. We are not backing down.
Except this time it didn't work. If anything, it helped drive a last-minute surge in financial support for the Teal candidate. Because there are only so many times one can pull that same extra ace out of one's sleeve. 3 years after dispatching Julian Burnside, Mr. Frydenberg did make history. Not as Australia's first Jewish Prime Minister, something many people we know have long predicted he shall one day be, but by being the first and only Liberal in history to be booted out of the OG division of the Liberal Party, the very seat of Sir Robert Gordon Menzies. Something both Liberals and Nationals are still struggling to understand to this very day.
I'm going to be really blunt here.
There is absolutely no bloody excuse for educated Australians to be so ignorant.
As we said in our first video, we at Naosis wish all the best for Mr. Frydenberg, and have no doubt that given his age, talent, drive, he has still much to offer his country for a long time. We just hope he reflects on the reasons the slander against Mr. Holmes Accord's character landed so badly with the residents of Kooyong, as did the slander against Jenny Leong in Newtown, which we discussed in our first video.
Someone get me anti-Semitism on Zoran! Boss, he's laser focused on making the city affordable for NYC's 1.4 million Jewish residents.
Just like the ugly and racist slander against Zoran Mamdani in the United States.
Tell me you got some.
There's not much, but maybe all we got.
That's it?
Yeah.
Just dress it up, make it look like an accident.
They poured in huge amounts of money. They outspent Mamdani about 30-1 between $25 and $30 million in Andrew Cuomo's campaign.
Which the voters of New York City, whose 5 boroughs house more Jews than Jerusalem and Tel Aviv combined, demonstrated when they voted for him anyway.
Brad and I are officially telling our supporters.
Rank me number one. Rank Zoran number 2.
For those who don't follow U.S. politics,
is Emily Ratajkowski and
Zoran Mamdani.
It's election day today. This election is going to be decided by young voters. Go ahead, get out there. We know it's hot, but the time is now.
Let's do it.
The most Jewish city in the world outside of Israel, with the largest Jewish population anywhere, voted for a Muslim who supports BDS, has accused Israel of genocide, and, most unforgivable of all, does not accept the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state, given the binational character of its people.
It is a heavy morning, a hefty dose of reality.
That's New York personality and influencer Lizzie Savetsky, whom we met in our previous videos. You might say she's New York's answer to our own Marnie Pearlstein. And as you can tell, she is not happy with what's going on in her city.
You know, there are billions of dollars that our community has poured into these nonprofit organizations. This is the result of it. It's honestly so pathetic.
I would wager that in that primary, more than 50% of the Jewish people voted for Mamdani.
That was challenger Andrew Cuomo speaking at a synagogue. In the Hamptons, of course. Who are you kidding?
I'm so excited for you to lose again.
She ain't messing with no broke niggas.
How many women have you harassed today?
It turns out he was too pessimistic. A poll after he spoke suggested it was just 43% of Jews, but 67% of Jewish New Yorkers under 45.
I have Jewish friends that live here too, and all of our parents won't stop calling us because they think it's like the Warsaw Ghetto in New York.
What's more, that same poll suggested that his clear moral stance on Israel and Palestine attracted far more voters, including Jewish voters, than repelled them.
I guess maybe it didn't work as much in the primary because you can't tell people that actually live here that it is like what they're saying on the news.
We are just a complete discombobulated mess.
Which, to be fair, is probably unique to New York City.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, all passengers. You are currently on the J train. Inshallah, we'll be at the next stop in 7 minutes. Alhamdulillah.
Which is making fervent preparations for the return of the 12th Imam.
Have a good day, and remember, Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
The man known in Shia Islam as the Mahdi. Okay, maybe he's not the 12th Imam. That's probably an exaggeration. But he definitely is an anti-Semite, at least according to
the IHRA definition, which is the internationally accepted definition.
That's awkward. A definition of anti-Semitism which is rejected by its authors, rejected by scholars of anti-Semitism, racism, and genocide, and now rejected by the people of New York City, arguably the Athens of the global Jewish community, including large numbers of Jewish voters in New York, especially young ones.
We can't stop arguing with each other, can't ever get aligned on a message. I think the real issue is the Jewish people of New York City don't have a clear leader.
Is a definition that is going to have serious problems in Australia.
Maybe I need to appoint myself to that position.
At some point, we just need to accept the reality that we can't force people to accept that which we cannot persuade them to believe.
If you're anti-Zionist, are you also anti-Semitic? The short answer is yes.
Make no mistake, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Their Jewish identity supersedes their local identity.
Our war, Our conflict is not with you.
Israel is Judaism and Judaism is Israel.
Judaism without Israel, it's not a thing.
I don't think there should be a Jewish people if we don't have the state of Israel.
Many people think that Israel should be one state of equal citizens between Palestinians and Jewish citizens. That is a view, and whether that becomes, it's deemed anti-Semitic.
I would not want an American Jewry if there was no state of Israel.
Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer. Yeah.
Well, of course it's a debate, but it doesn't mean that you can't say that that is anti-Semitic. I think it is.
Delegitimizing the state of Israel is anti-Semitic.
You can criticize Israel without being anti-Jewish, they say.
Yeah, not really. Not really, I think.
Okay, boomer. Yeah, boomer.
Is criticism of Israel anti-Semitic? It absolutely can be.
Okay, that's better. That's former Attorney General Mark Dreyfus, who is being much more reasonable, because it's obviously true. But like many things politicians say, the truth is what makes it misleading, because anything can be anti-Semitic. Is criticism of the taste, texture, and smell of gefilte fish anti-Semitic?
It absolutely can be.
If I gave you an anti-Semitic reason for it, this discourse is trivial, because it's meant to distract rather than to enlighten.
Not really, I think.
People can say that as often as they like, repeating that satisfying mantra to an already converted audience. But the fact remains that as of today, 2025, it does not pass the pub test. Maybe someday it will. We don't believe in closing minds.
The discourse of anti-Semitism has been completely perverted by the need to find a way of delegitimizing and censoring people who are critical of Israel or even critical of Zionism, because you don't have good arguments.
But to pass the pub test, we'll clearly need to find better arguments.
This is ludicrous.
What do you think? I think we should keep it real.
Until we do, there is no law, no university policy, no mandatory training regimen, nothing that will convince people that a man like Zoran Mamdani hates Jews. When that's something so many Jewish New Yorkers clearly don't believe.
And somehow he tricked a bunch of Jews into voting for him.
That's another problem for Jonathan Greenblatt.
I sort of agree, 100% with Zoran on Israel and Palestine, but I know for sure he wants every Jewish New Yorker to feel safe in their city.
And let's be frank, if it doesn't work in New York City, it's not going to work in Melbourne or Sydney. That's not obvious for elites living inside their bubbles, whether we are talking about New York City elites or Australian ones. They live in a world surrounded by people who aren't telling them what's happening in communities they don't understand.
Anti-Semitism may be ingrained in the cultural fabric of certain segments of our society.
Which is why they get tempted by explanations like these, which we've discussed in prior videos. Such views are dangerously disconnected from important conversations happening all over the Western world. What's worse, not only do they perpetuate harmful stereotypes to vulnerable communities, but they in turn breed resentment, radicalism, and, if we do it long enough, eventually may very well lead to the exact violence that Mr. Frydenberg has spent so much of the past 2 years warning us about. Even worse than all that, it has inculcated a pathological blindness to the distinction between hatred of Jews, which remains very rare in Australia, just as in the US, and principal opposition to policies to which some Jews are deeply committed.
If you define anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism, like the Anti-Defamation League does, you are going to see a lot more anti-Semitism on the left. You're actually going to see a shocking degree of anti-Semitism among Jews themselves.
That blindness has put Western elite institutions, acting ostensibly in the name of Jews, including Jews who haven't asked for it, on a dangerous collision course with the vast majority of citizens, regardless of religious, ethnic, or political identity.
Comparing the policies of Israel to the Nazi regime, what if their policies ever became the same? Is this a static definition?
Or what if we just have different opinions and your opinion is now a crime?
Most people understand this. However, we're not sure how many understand how badly things are actually going.
They've called you a bigot and they call you an anti-Semite and say you're a hater and try to destroy your character. That seems like a very different level of response.
And how much worse history suggests they really could get for everyone. Jews and non-Jews alike, if we don't address this issue proactively.
They had like a horde of Jewish students from Harvard coming in saying, I don't feel safe at my school. The very things that conservatives have been mocking so viciously when that came from black students.
Is it because I was black?
Or trans students or immigrants or Muslims or whatever. The hypocrisy.
Ain't it hypocritical?
The stench of it is suffocating.
Yeah, it's been real. That's quite racialist, to be honest.
And nauseating.
The purpose of this video is to explain all that and offer solutions.
No, I don't think people should feel safe intellectually. Hear things that you disagree with and fight back.
I think you can have any opinion you want on Israel. I'm not actually that interested. I personally like Israel. Whatever.
Just chucking me out because the color of my skin.
The red line for me is, this is my country. My birthright is free speech. God gave me that right. Cannot take it away. And if you're telling me what I'm allowed to say in my country, you're my enemy.
Why is it mainly the black man? That's a bit racist.
Like, it's just kind of that simple.
I am tired of the intimidation, the punishment, and blacklisting of both Jews and
Listen to that anger. These are not Islamic fundamentalists or skinheads. These are Jewish American men. Comedian Matt Lieb and journalist Glenn Greenwald, as well as Peter Beinart, whom we've met before, along with right-wing pundit Tucker Carlson, whom we'll hear from in another video, and the man who might be the Bernie Sanders of the right, Congressman Thomas Massie, articulating anger that has been building for a very long time and which will be consequential for the rest of our lives.
Don't let the war of words ever be fought about Israel's nature. Let it be fought about why you can't accept Israel.
That's Harvard professor Ruth Weiss, who we met in the first video. And we can see how this thinking has become ingrained in the antisemitism discourse and in the IHRA definition itself.
The Anti-Defamation League knows that if it's trying to defend the military court system in the West Bank, it's already lost.
For better or worse, that's over.
Any discussion of what life is actually like for Palestinians on the ground, you've already lost the conversation.
It's a bit racist,
I think it's a bit racist.
Turn the subject to the accusers, not to the accused.
Speak to the hand because the head ain't listening.
This is the criticism that I've received, for example, from the head rabbi of the biggest synagogue in Sydney, who delivered an entire speech accusing me of anti-Semitism, which was then reprinted in the Australian edition of the Financial Times.
How did the guy describe himself? A reasonable...
Middle-of-the-road Jewish London.
Middle of the road, yeah.
Sometimes I learn.
It's not going to work anymore, and in fact, it will be counterproductive, as the experience of Zoran Mandami and others illustrates today.
And by the way, I will predict, Rita, with considerable certainty, and we can lay a bet on this, that any criticism of Mandani in the coming days and weeks will be batted back by him and his supporters as being in some way bigoted. And they will say he's a Muslim, he's a recent immigrant. How dare you say anything against him? And that will, I guarantee, be the playbook we will run on.
Elise Stefanik, Republican congresswoman, called him a jihadist. Laura Loomer, conspiracy theorist but close ally to the president, said there'll now be another 9/11. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene posted a picture of the Statue of Liberty with what seemed to be a burqa on it.
Oh, no doubt. I'm not having that bet.
So the move is always to basically turn attention away from what's actually happening to Palestinians on the ground and turn it into a question about the motivations of the person who is making the criticism.
Teach them how to defend by attacking.
As we've said, for reasons that will be enumerated in this video, that's not going to work anymore for millennials and Gen Zs. It's not going to work with non-Jews, and it's not going to work with Jews, who, as we've established in prior videos, don't get any protection just because they are Jewish.
So the 500 Jewish people who put an ad which implored the Albanese government to not agree with Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, you're against your fellow Australian Jews. The ad which implored the Albanese government not to side with ethnic cleansing in Gaza is shameful and throws the rest of the Jews of Australia under the bus. Your ad means nothing. You're still a Jew. You're just a shit Jew.
Some will look at the hatred and will want to turn away from the Jewish identity, hide it, side with the oppressors.
If Jews raise a fist, they raise a fist in order to smash their own chests.
As comptroller, Lander quietly divested from the New York City pension funds for Israel bonds.
Anti-Israel Jews are not part of a big tent.
Biggest single enemy
to the Jewish people are not the Islamic supremacists. The biggest enemy you have is inside the wire.
That is called a divestment, as in boycott, divestment, sanction, as in media, as in self-hating Jew.
There's also a climate of fear that exists in the American Jewish community.
You are a self-loathing Jew. Go kill yourself, an anti-Semitic Jew.
The ones that I blame are the ones who they want to hold Israel responsible for the aggression against it. Those are intolerable.
And now he wants to lead the largest Jewish city in the world.
Abandoning Israel, we desert God.
Rabbis know that if you publicly criticize Israel too harshly, you very may well lose your job.
And you have to fight them. You have to fight them the same way as you fight other anti-Semites, because they are simply Jewish anti-Semites.
You have an enemy inside the wire.
Or if you're a teacher at a Jewish school or a Jewish camp, people know this very well.
You're emotionally damaged, Jewishly.
As non-Jews, we can't comment on whether men like Mr. Lieb or Greenwald or others are good or bad Jews.
I pray in a synagogue that has some folks who think of themselves as Zionists and some folks who think of themselves as anti-Zionist.
I have friends who are anti-Zionists. I'll come clean. I don't think I do.
Do not be fooled by the fact that Lander is Jewish.
We just know that they are no longer accepting such charges as politely as they used to.
If this jihadist wins, it's going to set off a whole trend throughout our country, because this is not just going to end with New York City.
Sarah Schwartz, who runs a bogus fringe organisation called the Jewish Council of Australia. It is an anti-Israel organisation, and it is all about Palestinian liberation.
The old rules of discourse, where Australians like Sarah Schwartz or Jenny Leong simply accepted ad hominem attacks like this without hitting back at their accusers, are over.
Don't appease, because you'll never win.
That's Norman Finkelstein, whom we met in our first video, talking about the changing discourse in New York City. In the case of Jenny Leong, while she stood by her comments about the influence of pro-Israel lobbies, she and the Green Party did apologize for the insensitive choice of words, and we at Neosis are glad they did. They reiterated their condemnation of anti-Semitism, which we at Neosis do not doubt are sincere, and they offered a $1,000 donation to a Jewish charity as a gesture of goodwill.
Did it help them?
No, it didn't. In fact, the apology was used to validate the false claim that she referenced an anti-Semitic cartoon, which, as we've established in our first video, she did not do. Why didn't Jenny Leong simply say, "Get stuffed, I never referenced that cartoon, and I won't shut up," as Deborah Conway did?
Stick to the end, because the head ain't listening.
Because Jenny Leong is Gen X, and those are the rules of the anti-Semitism discourse we grew up with.
You can't appease them, because the issue is not anti-Semitism. The issue is Israel and the class war.
Whatever you think of this lefty professor, for young people, that's the message they're taking away, and the discourse about Israel, Palestine, and anti-Semitism has changed forever. By the end of this video, we think you'll understand why people my age have no option other than to prepare to get used to it.
I am not the extremist. I am in the mainstream. I go with what Amnesty International has to say, Human Rights Watch, the International Court of Justice, a large number of Holocaust scholars, including Israeli genocide scholars. You are the extremists.
But have you heard this one, though?
You are the fringe.
Death to the IDF! Death to the IDF!
I am not the fringe. You are.
Death to the IDF!
Israel is the fringe.
Death to the IDF!
Israel's defenders are the fringe.
How did the guy describe himself? A reasonable...
Middle-of-the-road Jewish London.
Middle of the road, yeah.
I am not.
Hell yeah, from the river to...
No appeasement. I am not the extremist.
Allah will be free.
You are.
To be clear, we do not endorse chants of death to anybody. But we also think the significance of Glastonbury hasn't yet been properly understood, which we'll try to correct later. We need to recognize this coming reality and start getting ready for the discourse that's coming, which we'll call the new rules and contours of the debate, because the choices we make today will determine whether it is going to be uglier and more dysfunctional debate or a healthier and more honest one.
When you call Israel a democracy, which I guess is right in the title of his book.
The single greatest threat to freedom of speech in the United States at this point in time is Israel and its supporters here in the United States.
It's a little bit difficult to accuse another group of being a death cult when the group you're supporting has killed so many more people than them.
Look at this sea change. Now Democrats sympathize more with the Palestinians by 43 points.
When you grow up as someone, especially in the third world, you have a very different understanding of the Palestinian struggle.
Who age 18 to 49 Democrats sympathize more with, the Israelis or the Palestinians? Again, in 2017, younger Democrats sympathize more with the Israelis by 14 points. Look at this shift now. Palestinians, they sympathize more with the Palestinians by 57 points.
I think the morals are incredibly central.
It is a glaring contradiction. We say we care about freedom and justice and self-determination, and yet for some reason we draw a line when it comes to Palestinians that accept them.
Because it's so at odds with what people want to believe about this country, just seeing the horror and wanting it to stop.
I agree.
And not wanting to see in their timeline every day another blown up baby that is, blood on our hands and every taxpayer.
See, I agree.
And there was a little girl sitting on the ground, and all of a sudden her head just started gushing blood like I've never seen anyone bleed in my life. And I realized I was watching the last moments of this little girl's life. And this is happening every single day.
And what makes that okay?
And it's penetrating low information voters like few things before. Even YouTube pranksters known as the Nelk Boys. Ask your kids if you haven't heard of them. They were invited to speak to Mr. Netanyahu at Blair House, no less, presumably because his team wanted to reach young American audiences and thought the Nelk Boys were just the kind of softball throwers who wouldn't cause him any problem. The interview went exactly as Mr. Netanyahu's team expected.
The Nelk Boys interview with Bibi Netanyahu. Let's see.
Why do you think you're so hated worldwide?
Well, a lot of propaganda. TikTok.
Why do they say Israel's starving the people of Gaza?
Well, because we're trying to get the food in. Hamas steals the food.
But the blowback on the Nelk Boys did not.
But Benjamin Netanyahu's not promoting a book, dog. He's promoting a genocide. That's the point. When he says something like that, well, the World Food Program has said that there is no evidence to suggest that Hamas is stealing aid. You don't have that follow-up in that situation, and Benjamin Netanyahu knows that, which is precisely why he went on the Nelk Boys podcast.
Their goal since 2023, which was articulated in official government documents, was they want to get all of the Palestinians out. They want them to move to Libya, Ethiopia, Morocco, these other countries, and they're framing it like, well, we're going to let them leave voluntarily. But what they're doing on the other side is they're starving them, dehydrating them, blowing up their homes, so that basically they have no choice. Do you want to stay here in hell, or you want to go move to Libya?
Having Netanyahu on is like having modern day Hitler.
No, I saw that.
Which is, honestly, guys, I'll be honest, I'm here to... That's a good point.
That's a good point. Not exactly, I think.
Chugging the wine.
Chugging his wine.
That was not a sip.
But it's not just among the young.
They're not going to believe you on healthcare and other things if they think you're full of shit on this.
So this is the kind of lady stalker who definitely would have been a Hillary Clinton in the Bernie versus Hillary.
Yeah,
definitely would have been Hillary. The allegations of anti-Semitism in a previous moment definitely would have cowed them, where we can't say that, we can't talk about that, whatever. And now here she is.
This was your moment, Hakeem, to also stand up against Islamophobia, because here's the thing about human rights, you guys. You don't get to cherry pick.
And it's not just about Israel. You can't just get a pass on this.
And so this kind of cherry picking, because of who donates to Hakeem Jeffries. AIPAC donates to Hakeem Jeffries. He has not said anything disparaging about Jewish people. He stands with them in solidarity. And this type of crap is so disgusting to me. And it is a cancer within the Democratic Party.
If you think you can continue to take money from AIPAC, whether you're Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer or whomever.
We lost these last two elections to an idiot because of these centrist policies, and you're being beholden to special interests. And by God, it's not going to happen again.
AIPAC is part of the constellation of forces that have delivered this country into the hands of Donald Trump and Steve Miller.
You can either be a part of the problem or a part of the solution. When we can clearly see with our eyes and clearly hear with our ears exactly what's happening with Israel and Gaza, we're not fucking stupid. Your base is smarter, and y'all are going to have to adapt or get the fuck out.
I don't know.
I love this lady. I love this lady.
I'll confess, I don't get it. You know, it's not for me, is the only way I would put it.
What do you disagree with her, though? She's going in. She's cooking.
Oh, the Democrats lost because of centrist
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
That's because Sagar Enjeti is a young right-wing Republican, and despite what you see on Sky and Fox News, the discourse in the right has changed as well.
Why can I burn an American flag in my country, but I get a mark by my name if I burn Israel's?
It's driving people insane, actually, and it's making people angry in a bad way.
So they're not stupid.
But how can you say that thousands of children were raped, but I'm not going to find out who raped them?
Yeah.
How can you say that?
I agree completely.
They said that. Thousands of children got raped?
Yeah.
Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. By the way, every single person in Washington, D.C. thinks that. I've never met anyone who doesn't think that. I don't know any of them that hate Israel, but no one feels they can say that. Why? And I think the longer that we play along with it, the more subterranean and creepy and hateful the conversation actually becomes. So I think it's better just to say it right out loud.
I can't believe you're bringing up Epstein. Are you serious? God, get a life. You guys are obsessed with this shit.
They're probably all sexually blackmailed. You question who rules this country?
I definitely would, because it's a blackmail ring, and anybody who wouldn't is not paying attention.
Never, ever believe Israeli figures. I've been in the government too long to know that the Israelis are patent liars.
That's Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. Obviously, he is talking about the Israeli government in that clip, not Israelis as people. However, as you might guess, he has been condemned as an anti-Semite for saying that. Which is puzzling for many people my age, because we grew up in an America in which men like Colonel Wilkerson frequently said such things about the Soviet Union, the country and culture in which many current Israeli officials grew up.
They are the focus of evil in the modern world.
That assertion by then-President Ronald Reagan received enormous scrutiny in America, as it should have, given it was the basis for an increase in defense spending that helped ravage America's national balance sheet in the 1980s. But nobody, not even the most lefty critics of President Reagan, ever said it was racist for him to say that.
You can criticize Israel as long as the criticism is the sort of criticism you could level at any other country.
Exactly, which is what Colonel Wilkerson was doing. How could it possibly be anti-Semitic to make an assertion about any country that...
They're always making their final territorial demand. Some would have us accept them at their word and accommodate ourselves to their aggressive impulses.
In any case, we don't know Mr. Wilkerson and have no idea whether he harbors any prejudices against any people. Just note that he was Colin Powell's chief of staff for almost 20 years in the Army and then the State Department, and is highly regarded in the national security establishment.
You should be able to decide for yourself whether you believe it or not. And keep in mind that anyone who seeks to deny you that right is not your ally, but your enemy.
Who did you not at all trust, even though you had to work with them? The Israelis. You didn't trust them. What percentage of guys you worked with didn't trust Mossad?
100%. That's legendary CIA officer and American hero John Kiriakou, who was the only American to go to prison over the illegal CIA torture program for his efforts to stop it and then to expose it. He's a genuine American hero.
Iran tried to improve relations with the United States on a number of occasions in the 80s and the 90s. And the lobby moved in and killed our efforts to accommodate the Iranians in any way.
But Israel has had control over U.S. policy.
That's University of Chicago political scientist John Mearsheimer, co-author of The Lobby, and Harvard economist Jeffrey Sachs.
They are inveterate liars. Let me say that again. They are liars. So you can't believe anything that comes out of Jerusalem.
The goal was 7 wars in 5 years. The only war that hasn't taken place yet, to Netanyahu's great consternation, is the U.S. war with Iran.
Look around, look at your streets, look at your country. Is your country cleaner? Is your country better for having fought Israel's wars for decades?
I'm not talking about a conspiracy theory. I'm talking about a conspiracy.
Oh, that's anti-Semitic.
We appreciate that for many people, such language is deeply offensive, and until recently, political blasphemy in the West. And it wasn't that long ago that it was unheard of outside the political fringe.
Wake up.
In Australia, our own Marnie Pearlstein expressed a sentiment with which we think all Australians, on both sides of this debate, would have a lot of sympathy.
The lunatics have taken over the asylum.
For real, me feeling that.
Whatever you think of her politics, she has been defending Israel forcefully, publicly, and pulling no punches.
And it's clear that the world is not okay.
Indeed, it is not. We just can't agree what's wrong with it.
Qatar is literally funding the anti-Semitism that we are seeing explode on college campuses right now.
In New York, Lizzie Savetsky has been taking her case straight to the people and to the streets. And she's doing that right in the epicenter, ground zero of the coming Shia takeover of America.
Have a good day, and remember, Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Guys, I really try not to speak poorly about my fellow Jews, but I'm actually at my breaking point.
We hear you. Litigious Harvard student Shabbos Kestenbaum has called on hedge fund managers Bill Ackman and Daniel Loeb to fund a, quote, massive grassroots campaign, unquote. Because nothing says grassroots like a multi-million-dollar capital infusion from multi-billionaires.
It's honestly so pathetic.
Here in Australia, Wentworth politician, businessman, and media personality Daniel Lukowitz, expert on radicalism, has been doing his part to engage in the marketplace of ideas,
which we discussed in another video. For now, let's just say that although we find his ex-accountant breathtakingly offensive, and to be clear, we don't know him or make any representation about his character as a person, other than to say that we stand by his right to engage in the debate about Israel, Zionism, and Gaza in the open marketplace of ideas, where he has the right to be as persuasive and compelling, making the arguments, as he is able to be. If we were giving him advice, we'd suggest he might be a more compelling advocate for Israel if he maybe gave it a rest with the jokes involving violence against women.
She picked the wrong vehicle to stand in front of.
And of course, if he is able to resolve whatever this was all about amicably.
It's honestly so pathetic.
We're doing our best, Ms. Savetsky. We're doing our best.
We're so disorganized. We can't ever get aligned on a message.
And why not? With so much rhetorical talent to draw from?
Because you don't have good argument.
Ooh, that's not good. So, Ms. Savetsky, maybe you could ask Mr. Dershowitz what he would do in a situation like this when he doesn't have good arguments.
Turn attention away from what's actually happening and turn it into a question about the motivations of the person.
Turn the subject to the accusers, not to the accused.
You mean like what was done with Mark Scott, as we demonstrated in our video on campus protests?
Jewish students have to kind of tough it out and feel uncomfortable.
Mark Scott says Jewish students will have to tough it out, being uncomfortable.
You have to know that that's the goal.
Or Jenny Leong, as we discussed in the first video.
Tentacles. It's a despicable anti-Semitic slur that evokes memories of the Nazi era.
It's not like with the Nuremberg Protocols. It's talking about how a lobbying organization uses money.
It's honestly so pathetic.
Your presentation could be construed as a direct insult.
Ain't it hypocritical?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
We are just a complete discombobulated mess.
Can we get some alignment on message, please?
Can't ever get aligned on a message.
Because you don't have good argument.
Well, I'm sorry. But if that's the case, that's not Ms. Latouf's fault.
I think the real issue is the Jewish people don't have a clear leader.
Yes, maybe we should go back to when everyone had an official ethnarch, like in Alexander's day. Things were so much easier then. But who would be a good person to fill in the role of a Jewish ethnarch?
Maybe I need to appoint myself to that position.
Respect.
I'm so offended by this, I can't even tell you.
Go on and flown it. What your mama gave you. Nobody out there gonna tame you.
So, despite funding for grassroots campaigns from men like Mr. Ackman, Loeb, and other hedge fund managers, despite the energy and verve of online influencers like Ms. Savetsky and Pearlstein, despite the support of almost every major media organization in the English-speaking world, things just aren't going well in the marketplace of ideas, are they?
Everybody under 30 is against Israel.
So women like Ms. Savetsky in the U.S. are turning to Plan B.
We are never going to win the hearts and minds of anti-Semites because they don't have hearts and they don't have minds.
We're not going to win their hearts and minds because they don't have hearts and they don't have minds.
We can arrest them, we can deport them, and we can cut off their funding.
We can deport them, we can put them in jail, we can make their lives miserable, we can cut off their funding.
In the U.S., many pro-Israel voices have given up on the marketplace of ideas, placing their faith instead on their ability to influence the government to repress speech. A strategy that we think will be tragic for America, tragic for Israel, and tragic for many American Jews, which is why we think it's so concerning that some Australians, including our anti-Semitism envoy, it seems, would like to emulate that strategy here.
Why do you insist that the government and its institutions use a definition of anti-Semitism that's been widely criticised, including by its author, who says it's being used as a blunt instrument to suppress pro-Palestinian speech?
If self-determination means having a nation that is majority Jewish, does the right to self-determination permit Israel to deny others their civil and human rights to maintain it?
Western liberal democracy. And some of the criticism about IHRA comes from the academics.
Of course, there are plenty of organisations around the world using the Alternative Jerusalem Declaration.
The Jerusalem definition is a definition from academics, for academics.
Now, Ms. Siegel never does explain what exactly she has against academics. But whatever it is, it's definitely not good.
Because it's those academics I just referred to. It's a definition by academics, for academics.
We get it. You don't like academics. Fine. Why does it mean we can't use their definition?
What it does and why we must resist it is it specifically recognises what anti-Semitism is not, including BDS, including criticism of Israel.
Quite right. Yes, I remember now. Thanks for jogging my memory. And this is anti-Semitic by definition because... Sorry, help me out here?
It is the official definition of anti-Semitism.
Because it's official, yes, thank you. I remember now.
A definition of anti-Semitism that the government accepted, the Australian government, previous government, and this government went in opposition.
Well, I guess that settles it. It's official.
Nobody would dispute the government in Australia.
It's un-Australian.
The government says so. So what's the problem?
They have a right to say it. Right? So, and don't use the law this way.
So, Allegra, in addition to promoting IHRA, you need to promote non-acceptance of Jerusalem definition.
There are two problems. One obvious, the other deeper and more profound. The obvious problem, as Ms. Spender must know, is that ordinary Australians don't take direction from lobbyists quite as willingly as politicians do.
Every other group gets their own country, except for Jewish people. And that to resist that is tacitly, implicitly anti-Semitic, and holding Jews to a different standard as every other group.
The international definition says that is anti-Semitic.
Which isn't true. There's like 400 languages spoken in India and they don't all get their own state. Like, what are we talking about? Not true.
It actually means getting rid of the state of Israel. I mean, I think that is a fairly clear point.
It is a debate. Everyone doesn't get their own state.
Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people.
Well, of course it's a debate, but I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't say that that is anti-Semitic. I think it is.
You can be upset with the policies of a government.
Don't hold Israel to different standards to other countries.
If you didn't say in the wake of enslavement of Africans, America should be destroyed, then why would you feel differently about this?
That's a reasonable question. And the emotional discomfort such question raises, especially in the shadow of the Holocaust, makes that question powerful, resonant, and conclusive. And that's why women like Ms. Siegel feel justified saying things like this about the IHRA definition.
I think it represents a fair attempt to describe what we are seeing. Hatred of the Jewish community, hatred of Jews. Criticising Israel is absolutely acceptable, but calling for its destruction is not.
Which brings us to the deeper problem for Mr. Greenblatt, for Ms. Siegel, and soon for the government. Gaza has made plain to everyone how much heavy lifting the word destruction is doing in the sentence you just heard. This, for example, is what destruction of a nation and a homeland looks like. We've watched it be live-streamed for almost 2 years. But so is this.
For the first time, they are free to cast their vote alongside whites.
Remember this day, boys. This is a day our country went to the dogs.
As Ms. Siegel, who was born in South Africa in 1955, surely knows, to many white South Africans of her generation, and almost all of her parents' generation, and I'm making a general statement about South Africans, not a conjecture about Ms. Siegel's family, of course, the end of apartheid was the destruction of their homeland and state as they imagined it. It was the destruction of their idea of South Africa. of what South Africa should be. To those old enough to remember, the trauma they felt was genuine. For Boers, it was the home of their unique language, identity, and 300-year pioneering history, as full of stories of heroism, victimization, injustice, and ultimately triumph as much as any other national story.
Today, President Mandela takes office in Pretoria.
Look at Mozambique and look at Zimbabwe.
For many white Southerners, the end of Jim Crow, and earlier of slavery, and for Protestants in Belfast, the Good Friday Accords, these all brought about the literal destruction of something that for them was very real.
We're next.
If you didn't say in the wake of enslavement of Africans, America should be destroyed.
That's the thing Mr. Greenblatt doesn't understand. We did do that. After the Civil War, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments literally destroyed what white Southerners euphemistically called their, quote, peculiar institution. The Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act destroyed Jim Crow. The same is true for almost every major political reform in history. All of them destroyed something that was extremely precious, powerful people. That's the only reason we read about them in history. That's what makes them important. That's even more true for the G word. For years, it was acceptable for white people to say things like this.
That's 260,000
They are warning about a potential genocide. In fact, I've interviewed you about this. Yes. In the Hamas manifesto, a genocide is called for of Israelis, of Jewish people, right?
What are we talking about? Not true.
No, it's not true. But Ms. Carvelis might think it's true, perhaps because the Hamas Charter calls for an end to the political arrangements that characterize the modern state of Israel and the concentration of political power on the Jewish minority who live under its dominion, which somehow a white woman thinks is appropriate to compare to genocide. But now that the UN has declared an official genocide, and we all have a more visceral feeling for what that looks like, the statement...
They are warning about a potential genocide. Yes. In the Hamas manifesto, a genocide is called for of Israelis, of Jewish people, right?
No, not right. And now that we are reminded what actual genocide looks like, at least according to the UN, that statement sounds callow, doesn't it? The problem for Ms. Siegel is that, thanks to Gaza, we now remember that historically, people who use the word destruction to talk about the metaphorical destruction of a political idea or system, rather than the physical destruction of human beings, are people we once called racists.
I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
White supremacists, Protestant bigots. This is leading an increasing number of people to decide that any worldview that conflates physical destruction of a homeland with a political reform that expands the franchise is practicing
Jewish supremacy.
Sure.
To be clear, we at Neosis are not here to accuse anyone of being a racist or a supremacist, and we certainly would not level such an accusation at someone we don't know. For reasons that shall be clear shortly, we think this is in general a terrible thing to do. We're simply pointing out that this is a new dimension to this conversation which we'll have to reckon with. Saying it's the official definition just won't cut it.
There is this positive stereotyping with Jewish people that is like so internalized that as folks are making these arguments in favor of Zionism, they're really not hearing the exceptional standards that they're applying to one specific group that are in fact reflective of a superiority. That's a very difficult thing to convey to people. But as someone who's been on the other side of that, it's very clear to me.
All colonized people see themselves in Palestine.
Which brings us another thing we need to put a pin in right now.
And all colonizers see themselves in Israel.
That the emotional resonance of this debate hits very differently depending on your cultural background for obvious reasons. It's not universal, of course, but in general, people of color, people from the so-called global south, tend to see these issues through a different lens than so-called white Judeo-Christians. The thing is, we white Judeo-Christians are less than 10% of humanity under 40. Less than 10%. So we're going to have to get used to a world in which our narratives and our framing and our history is no longer the default one. Sorry to tell you that, and no amount of border control or deportation is going to change that. As for men like Mr. Sebag Montefiore, whose general writing about history I very much admire, but on things like this is writing to an increasingly narrow audience of the already converted, he can nitpick this or that narrative all he likes. It doesn't change the fact that this is the lens through which other people see things. Other people meaning 90% of the future of humanity. So we all better start getting smarter about what that looks like and what it means.
You still, at the end of the day, have to publicly wrestle with the fact that Israel isn't what you thought it was?
And I don't know. Like, I'm telling you, I've had this conversation with certain people in my life so many times.
Like, is that going to be forever? You're just never going to get over the fact that this is possible.
And I don't know how to get...
It's hard to give it up.
People are going to die on that Temple Mount.
Because it's a kind of protection against a lot of humiliation and shame.
Like, I just think generationally we're not going to get... Like, I just don't think we're going to get past that.
We agree. We've seen this movie before, which is why we believe the next generation of Australians, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindu, all of them, they are so important. And it is so critical that we don't close off opportunities for them to engage with each other on questions that, unfortunately, my generation and the generations of Australians older than me just is not equipped to address.
Avoiding false or distorted narratives. What false or distorted narratives do you have in mind?
I don't have anything in particular in mind.
Perhaps we might refresh your memory, Ms. Siegel.
Someone gets up and says something terrible about Israel, terrible that without a very big stick, perhaps, in terms of funding, that, you know, anyone's really going to do much about it on campus.
That's Arnold Bloch-Leibler partner and now former Zionist Federation of Australia, or ZFA, President Philip Chester, making the case, or to be fair to him in that specific clip, inquiring about the case.
The idea, for example, of taking funding away from institutions or universities that everybody's going to get very excited about.
For exactly the kind of big stick Ms. Siegel insists she or someone like her needs, even as we are all assured no one would ever have to use it.
I don't think it'll ever get to that point.
The objective here is that you don't end up in that world.
I think really it's our job to fight for that.
That's Allegra Spender, MP for Wentworth, whom we hold in very high regard, but who in this case, we believe, is pandering to her audience. She's not doing what she should be doing as a representative, telling her audience what they need to hear, or at the very least, asking her audience some simple questions to ensure they understand what it is they are asking of her. First, just practically, what exactly do we have in mind that might be more
terrible about Israel, terrible
than allegations of war crimes, apartheid, and now genocide, which, whether you agree with them or not, have been made by 2 former Israeli PMs, 2 former heads of Shin Bet, many Israeli and international human rights organizations, and can easily be read in both Hebrew and English in the pages of Israeli newspapers. What are we talking about that is more terrible than all that, but not terrible enough to meet the definition of racism under our already existing hate speech laws?
May not like what is going to be said either, but they have a right to say it. Right? So, and don't use the law this way.
Second, do you realize that any such metaphorical stick, whether it's a blunt stick, sharp stick, or any stick, will automatically come attached to it in the minds of Australians a great big metaphorical flag? And don't bother complaining that this isn't fair. If we accept that as a practical reality, does that change in any way the appeal of having such a stick? Does the knowledge that the stick will be wielded by people who might not be Jewish, who might not know much about Israel, might not care, or might just even not be that competent, does that knowledge change anything about the appeal of creating such an Israel-coded stick? Finally, does the knowledge that even the existence of said stick, even if never used, will affect, constrain, and may even poison the quality, authenticity, and value of conversations between Australians, especially young Australians whose minds are all still free of the hang-ups and prejudices which have accumulated in ours? When was the last time you had an authentic conversation with someone holding a big stick?
Because the biggest advocacy tool that we have is Jewish students who feel comfortable and proud to share what Zionism means to them, what Israel means to them, and what Judaism means to them on campus.
That's Alyssa Foster, former president of the Australian Union of Jewish Students, saying something that no doubt made every person in that room proud, and with which we agree. But the question we would put to Ms. Foster is, how is the next Alyssa Foster going to do any of that if her classmates are uncomfortable speaking to her because of the presence of Ms. Spender's metaphorical Israel-coded stick? Most importantly, what are the other options we are taking off the table the moment we put on the table a great big stick? What's the opportunity cost of foregoing persuasion, which big sticks never do? Let's not forget that.
What I'm concerned about is that when you go down this road,
you really actually do a disservice to the university. You do a disservice to Jewish students.
Of course, persuasion isn't easy. It requires understanding evidence, constructing logical arguments, and after all that, delivering those with flair, panache, and resonance. And those are very rare skills. If only the ZFA knew where they could find people with such skills. Perhaps such people might suggest different possibilities. For better or worse, we Australians seem determined to test the proposition that big sticks are the way to preserve and enhance domestic cohesion and social harmony. All we at Neosis can do is continue to warn everyone, Jew and Gentile alike, that such sticks will help confirm for many Australians certain narratives about the world and about our democracy.
When Charlie was denounced as anti-Semitic and, quote, dangerous by the American Jewish Committee, you were too.
The history of this era will say that Jewish people were the sledgehammer for fascism.
There is a layer here of nefarious pressure to have certain narratives go only one way.
What democracy? I have no power. The government's going to take part of my earnings, not to help my fellow American citizens. It's not going to go to them. It's going to go toward the bombs.
To turn around and call Charlie Kirk an anti-Semite is such a disgusting smear. So this was just such an unfair accusation. And I don't know why these very ardent advocates don't accept friendship when you offer it.
A narrative said that their elites know the truth about the world, but traffic in lies because they are in on those lies too. If these aren't the kind of pre-revolutionary conditions that historians like Toynbee once described, I don't know what are. First, the dominant minority attempts to hold by force inherited privilege which it has ceased to merit. Then the proletariat repays injustice with resentment, fear with hate, and violence with violence. Those narratives aren't necessarily anti-Semitic because there are many explanations for what's going on that has nothing to do with ethnicity. And we've been pretty clear in this video about what we at Neosis believe. But without healthy democratic institutions and open and authentic debate, there's no guarantee that misguided explanations and bad ideas will ever get removed through the cauldron of collective vetting that happens in a free and unfettered marketplace of ideas.
Look. Blaming migrants and the able-bodied poor is why Trump won this election.
That's the whole reason everyone voted for President Trump.
But a system where working people struggle so much.
There's real rage about the decay in the country.
Yes.
Abandoning young people.
Is why Mamdani won his election.
It is not sustainable and very untenable, the system the way it is.
For all the people who are worried about Mamdani's socialist tendencies, guess what?
And everybody's noticing this, people on the left, people on the right.
He's the best case scenario because this system is not sustainable. And if this doesn't change, there's going to be more drastic action.
Folks, when people from the far right to the far left
and everybody's noticing this
are all engaged in the same kind of revolutionary ideation, that's a sign. And no, it is not normal. The reaction to the murder of United Health CEO Brian Thompson last year was a shot across the bow for America. As we cover in 2 different videos in this series, Americans are ready to be red-pilled and will be looking for someone to explain to them how their reality came to be so different from their expectations and what was promised to them.
American global leadership is over.
They will also be looking for someone to tell them whom they should blame.
Somehow, we gave away our foreign policy to Israel years and years ago, and it's been absolutely devastating.
In the same way, on the Democratic side, Israel exposes the hypocrisy of a supposed commitment to human rights. On the Republican side, it exposes the hypocrisy of a supposed commitment to America first.
Israel is a strategic albatross around our neck.
We appreciate that for many people, such language is deeply offensive, and until recently, political blasphemy in the West. And it wasn't that long ago that it was unheard of outside the political fringe. We're sorry to say, we're going to see many other taboos broken in the years to come. Here's one. Can anyone imagine a major Australian newspaper publishing a cartoon depicting a pro-Israeli politician standing in a wheelbarrow of red blood, pushed by a grisly figure dressed up as an IDF soldier? This cartoon, which we'll be honest, we consider tasteless and borderline incitement, is considered an acceptable criticism of Adam Bant by Dennis Shanahan, the Australian's political editor and honorary PhD, simply because he is critical of Israel. even though we all know he has no relationship to Hamas, has never expressed support for Hamas, and has never traveled anywhere to stand and be photographed with representatives of Hamas. How long before someone decides to test the proposition that if Mr. Bant can be associated with Hamas in such a graphic and frankly offensive way? And why shouldn't Australian politicians who have traveled to Israel be treated similarly? This, for example, is a former Labour senator making a joke about Mr. Bant being blown up by Israeli pagers. For all the talk about Green Party extremism, we've never seen anyone associated with the Greens, or any pro-Palestine organization for that matter, ever personally accuse a fellow Australian of murder, much less joke about being physically harmed. And we have no doubt such a tweet directed at a pro-Israel politician, Jewish or otherwise, would be career-ending for almost any Australian. Today, if someone were to depict any of the politicians as Mr. Bant has been depicted by Mr. Shanahan in the pages of The Australian, or make jokes about them being blown up by Hezbollah or Hamas, as former Senator Feeney did, that would probably merit 10 separate addresses in Parliament and a dozen wailing lamentations on Sky. But we better get comfortable with the concept, because while that's unthinkable for our generation, it's not unthinkable for Gen Zs. This is the kind of discourse they're sharing. They don't believe their institutions or people the age of you and me.
I'm a liberal guy, but sometimes kids gotta die. It's true. I saw a free parking sign, thought it said Free Palestine. Yeah. But a Zionist Jew, born and raised with Western views, yeah? This is self-defense.
That's anti-Zionist comedian Matt Leave mocking Zionist screenwriter Lee Kern, both of them Jewish.
This is my land. You can tell by me accent. Yeah.
In the kind of language that would not have been possible a few years ago.
My white skin is reddened because the sun is anti-Semitic.
You can call it impolite, but trust us, if you think this is hard to hear, you should check out what young people are saying. The point we are making is that this is a conversation that is going to have a new edge, and we are going to have to get used to it and engage it on the substance, because the old rules of discourse, as we said, are history. We are not going to be able to eliminate harmful or even dangerous discourse.
I love all people. You can tell because I drew a heart with the dreads of me tank. I respect
any more than we can eliminate germs and viruses. We can only make our society healthy enough to be resistant to them.
We really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem.
We certainly do. But Jonathan Greenblatt is not going to solve it because, as I think we established in the last video, his fundamental understanding of the problem is wrong.
Cut it, run it, done it, go. Good or bad, it's hard to tell. Going fast for Israel. BB is bad.
In the meantime, the rest of us are going to have to start getting ready for the world that is coming, for better or for worse. To be clear, we hope we never see discourse in Australia descend to this depth. If you share that hope, then we need to start changing the standards of discourse in Australia now. If we want that discourse to be healthy, we who run this country, white boomers and Gen Xers, need to agree to rules that the next generation will accept.
Some people think shooting fish in a barrel is courageous. Don't care what the ICJ says.
They are not going to accept the rules of discourse that has brought us to this point. This means the time to find something better is now.
It's complicated. I believe in peace, I believe in love, inequality. I believe in all that different stuff, which is why Palestinians should be exterminated. Oopsie daisy.
Because once they have the power, and that day is closer than we think, it's going to be too late to convince them that they should be politer to us than we have been to them. Ironically, this is exactly the kind of thing that people in New York are negotiating as we speak.
The safety and thriving and liberation of Jews and Muslims is bound up together. It is just patently true, and it's true in Israel and Palestine, and it's true in New York City.
The Al Jazeera effect.
They hear calls in which they say they don't want Jews on campus or they don't want Zionists on campus. There's a lot of Jews who feel that Zionism is inextricably combined with their identities. And so a lot of times people feel that those calls in and of themselves don't welcome conversation.
The opportunity we have in this general election to build a coalition of New Yorkers who understand what inclusive multiracial democracy can look like and do it with the joy that was in his campaign and our cross endorsement, I think is a great opportunity for how to stand up to fascism.
That's the kind of democracy we're going to need to address some pretty important open questions, like whether we still think Israel is even a democracy. Consider just one example. which not long ago was probably the single most contentious debate about Israel, at least before the idea of genocide was on the table. And that's the question of apartheid.
Calling Israel a colonial state, apartheid, genocidal is simply historical fantasy.
Anyone has spent time with Palestinians cannot unsee what you see there. To see the settlers encroaching on it, the very blatant apartheid.
Amnesty's report is an infamous and disgusting document.
Why can't he be with us?
Full of lies, full of misrepresentation.
Because there are limits for Palestinians, so we can't.
A beacon of democracy in a sea of hostility.
I don't think it's defensible under any definition of democracy to call this place a democracy.
When you call Israel a democracy, which I guess is right in the title of his book, I think you run up against a real problem.
Do my kids have some kind of like a right to return?
The Zionist project always knew it was going to involve transfer.
That's insane that they have more right to live there than the Palestinians.
That was Benny Morris's words.
And it's been layered over with this idea that this is some liberal democracy.
Anyone that has been to Israel would know that the allegation of apartheid is simply false and an insult.
You see what non-democracy looks like.
To say Israel is a apartheid state.
When people look at the West Bank today and say this is an apartheid system, it's not just throwing out a word.
No one could intelligently describe Israel as an apartheid state.
The Zionist settlers, and they spoke about this openly.
Palestinians live in, day out, without experiencing a day of freedom
in this allegedly apartheid state.
But forget that. I'll let that one go and just say, I'll call you a democracy if you just kept being a democracy like that moving forward.
Why is it everyone is banging on about the right to vote?
The real problem is the occupation that starts in 1967.
We would enter a house of an innocent Palestinian home in the middle of the night.
Western liberal democracy.
It's a democracy.
You cannot have interfaith marriage.
Unlike all the other countries in the region.
I could not marry my wife.
It's imperfect.
Prohibition on race mixing.
Like all democracies on the planet.
Exposes the tension between Zionist values and liberal values of equality.
Oh, this is what the American South would have felt like in the 1940s or 50s. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I think I had not been prepared for was its visual immediacy.
I immediately understood what was going on over there. And I have to say, it was quite familiar.
What we need is nuanced, thoughtful, and balanced interrogation of these issues. These are complicated issues.
The most shocking thing about my time over there was how uncomplicated it actually is.
There's things about Israeli society I like. I don't hate the people there. I'm Jewish. I love Jewish people.
1,000 Palestinians face one of the single biggest expulsion decisions since the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories began.
The way this is reported in the Western media is as though one needs a PhD in Middle Eastern studies to understand the basic morality.
This is part of a pattern of increased violence that has terrorized communities. In the past 2 years, we've seen over 31 Palestinian communities driven out of their homes.
This report does not give Israel any option to be legitimate in the eyes of Amnesty International unless it literally commits national suicide.
I understand that Greenblatt and perhaps Tapper feel like Israel is not an apartheid state, but unfortunately for them, apartheid isn't about your feelings.
An American citizen was killed intentionally by IDF.
That's not a democracy. That's an apartheid state.
They are a democracy.
Well, no, you're really not.
Israel is unsustainable. There's no coming back from this. Something new needs to be created. Critics should ask themselves how Israeli apartheid could be dismantled. What would a post-apartheid country look like? Lashana Tova.
These are politically determined. They're not simply because that's the way Arabs are. Right. That's the way Muslims are. And it's that racist discourse that I think is part of what makes it so hard for us to imagine that equality actually could make us safe.
to see that more than double in just 5 years is shocking.
All forms of racism are interconnected. And what this means in terms of government responses is that instead of law and order approaches, we support those that oppose all forms of racism, which don't create hierarchies of racism and which target systemic and structural discrimination.
The lids have been blown off the sewers by the anti-Zionists. So
I don't want to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, but
they're the same. They're two hues of the same color.
The Jewish Council is deeply concerned about rises in anti-Semitism in Australia, which is part of a broader increase in racism that includes Islamophobia, anti-Indigenous racism, anti-Asian racism, and anti-Palestinian racism. And we're especially concerned about the rise of far-right extremism. We consider that the only way for us to effectively fight anti-Semitism is by working in partnership with other groups also facing bigotry and discrimination.
It's been incredibly disappointing to see some groups, politicise this moment and straight away start blaming other racialised groups.
It is incredibly powerful to see so many young people waking up, asking questions, young and old people.
The Empire did nothing wrong.
IHRA will graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering, Molecular and Cellular Engineering, and a minor in resistance to genocide.
The liberal media is not going to tell you that.
You may not know this, but IHRA is USC's 2024 valedictorian.
Things that I have, world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it, the world didn't take it
It was Assange Corey said, never let anyone tell you who your enemy is. Don't let them tell you that people who are protesting a genocide are your enemy.
Andrew Cuomo went into a synagogue in this race and called me and Zoran and the black speaker of the city council anti-Semitic.
They don't give a shit. Fairly highly educated class of Jewish city dwellers, and most of them rent.
You have people that are in control of large groups of people that convince these people that these other large groups of people that they don't even know are their enemies.
There's a class divide among Jews.
The enemies are the ones who are telling you that the students protesting for peace, protesting against the genocide,
they are happy to use us as pawns for their own political purposes.
Why do you call yourselves the Jewish Council of Australia?
The only Jewish safety that's important is Zionist Jewish safety.
You're emotionally damaged, Jewishly.
The ones telling you that these people are your enemy are the real enemies.
Don't fall for it.
We've got people in our country who hate our country. Thank you.
Yavo shalom aleinu. Yavo shalom aleinu. Yavo shalom aleinu.